Oh, great. You just know how to stroke my ego.
Yeah, no, it's a good day. It's exciting. I'm excited to take a deep dive into the RRG with people. It's good. I'm so excited for speeders.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's the age of armor.
I do want to say one thing, which is that we have at least one person saying no audio for Nerf, which would be hilarious because you've been the main person talking. So let's double check real quick the screen and make sure that you can, in fact, hear my man Nerfley here as well. See if that's...
lovely. All right, so I'll redo that intro because that was a lovely intro that my teammates heard. But
Did you have yourself muted?
I did. I pulled the thing. I muted myself. So
on our first live stream together. That's perfect. I love it.
Yeah. Hey, there's a whole bunch of technical difficulties before this, so why not have it carry into the stream? Anyway, I'm Nerfley, also known as Brad. That's Ben. That's John. Yeah. This is the RRG 2.0 update. I did a great intro that no one will ever hear. But yes, we are here and we are ready to start. So what we're going to be doing tonight, we're going to start from the top, as you can see on the screen here. We'll be zooming in on any specific highlighted text that we want to go over. But we're just going to go from the top. If we see blue text, we'll comment on it. If it's interesting, we'll talk about it for a bit and we'll keep chugging down. All the discussion of the points changes and all the craziness at the end will come at the end because it's at the back of the RRG. But beyond that, if you have any questions or specific things you want to talk about, please let us know. And we are about to get started. So, starting off here, there's nothing interesting from the first couple pages. As we scroll through, all of that's the same. There's a slight change down here, which I'll zoom in on, which is if a mini has an objective token but is legally placed on terrain in such a way that it's impossible to place the token in contact with the mini's base. Okay, so that's basically just the margin of error stuff, which is on the margin of error page. So if you're carrying a bomb in bombing run, you can put it as close as possible. And if your terrain's in the way or something like that. Some nice little cleanup stuff. There's going to be a bunch of those in here. We'll try to skip through those pretty quick if they're not super relevant. But note, go read it yourself. There's a lot of those quality of life changes that you're going to zoom in on. I think one of the first major changes, though, and I think, Ben, maybe you want to take this one. I think we'll talk about some changes that are happening to the agile keyword, which will also apply to the tactical keyword.
Yeah, so this is a big one for the game in general, and in summary, I'm much better at the TLDR. I think probably my teammates have been more thorough than I have and have looked through this more in advance than I have. But I know that there's no more token generation in turn 0. So if we look here at the agile keyword, we can see agile X allows the unit to gain a number of dodge tokens equal to X each time that unit performs a standard move action. Climbing, clambering, embarking, disembarking, pivoting, reversing, and strafing are not standard move actions. And this effective Agile X keyword is triggered by both free and non-free standard move actions, and a compulsory move is a standard move action. So if you are compulsorying with your agility on your steps, you do get that. And we gain those dodge tokens only after you perform a standard move action. So we've got nothing in the deployment phase for your token generation nonsense. Get it out.
Yeah, so as a GAR player myself, I love that this is gone and I hate that this is gone. So what this means is for Cassian, for Rex, for ARC Troopers, for Tauntauns, if you were going to do a scout move, you no longer get a token during the deployment phase. If you get for example, with Tauntauns, no times for sorrows, no longer will give free dodges to Tauntauns. So they don't get that extra free one on that turn. What this does specifically, this affects obviously Tauns in that they've been able to get a bunch of dodges through stuff like Force Push or No Time for Sorrows. But for tactical, it specifically affects the very dangerous and horrifying turn 1 take that clanker shot. That was well known to just eliminate things straight off the bat, because the Gar player would start with about 7, 8 aim tokens or something by the end of turn 1 if they did things correctly.
I believe it was exactly 100. It was 100.
It was enough to make a huge difference, and I myself have been very guilty of eliminating things off the board on turn 1 with ARC Troopers. So what it does now is you have to treat it a little more like you would lying in wait, in that it's more of a wind-up. So, like, for example, Rex, if he has offensive push, if he double moves and taps offensive push, he can still generate 3 aims during turn 1. So what you're going to want to do is you have to use your units to generate additional aim tokens before punching. So that's going to delay that strike from the first activation of the turn, being so powerful, which allows, you know, a player on the other side to maybe see it coming and get their units into safer positions or out of harm's way. So then that also gives a little more timing restrictions on, or releases some of the timing restrictions on Take That Clankers. So you're not always going to see it turn 1 anymore. It can be used turn 2, 3, 4, really any turn evenly, because you don't have those surplus aims from the start. That's really just the main thing here. If anyone else has any comments on that, please feel free to put it in the chat. Otherwise, we're going to zoom back out and we're going to continue on. Actually, John, do you have any comments on that before we go on? I cannot hear you, John.
I was to say I was muted because somebody's being very noisy. I think the interesting thing too is you mentioned it kind of in passing, is that there's no longer an interaction with Force Push. So you don't have that awkward situation where you want to do something as an opponent to Tauntauns, for example, and you end up benefiting them while you're simultaneously putting yourself in a better position. They're not going to get that advantage anymore. You're just going to be able to yank them into combat with you, and feel better about that, which I think is a straight buff to any Force user, which is nice. It's not a strong buff, not a major buff, but it's a buff.
Yep, that for sure.
A little bit helps.
Yeah, and you know, you're not going to force push Rex and generate a name token either, which is really scary. Okay, so moving on to the next couple pages here. So another quality of life thing: Bane tokens are enemy effects, people. Remember that for the purposes of enemy effects. So that's for like hostage and such like that. Someone's being a little noisy.
I told you so. I'm gonna go back on mute now.
All right. So, yep, another thing for hostage right here underneath base contact. Units cannot be placed into or move into base contact with an enemy mini during setup. So that would, you know, involve taking a scout move into like an infiltrated Jin Urso, for example, or, you know, deploying, like, somehow using a scout move to get in base contact with an enemy hostage on turn 1. That's a no-go. So Beam had a couple bit of changes here. I actually haven't read this entry myself, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on it and take a look and see what happened here. So Beam X keyword fires a continuous beam of energy, sweeps across, yada yada. If during the declared defender step of the attack, if a weapon with the Beam X keyword is attackable, it may up to X additional attacks. Each attack must be declared against a different target that's at range 1. That's all basically the same. Each additional defender must be in line of sight of the attacker, so that's a clarification there. And other friendly units can't fire support. That's the same, of course. That hasn't been changed. And additional defenders are declared by repeating steps 1 and 2 of the attack sequence. So additional defenders are declared one at a time. So you declare all the people who are going to be defending, and then you do the first attack, second attack, third attack. So just some clarification on how the rules on this worked. Nothing really changed. We do have a sneaky little thing hiding here, though, with a new keyword, Bolster X. Ben, you want to read this one?
As a card action, a unit with the Bolster X keyword can choose up to X friendly units at range 1. Each chosen unit gains a Surge token. unit using the bolster X keyword may choose itself as one of the friendly units. So what we have here is the surge token version of sharpshooter and take cover. Glad to see it.
You mean spotter?
Yeah, whatever.
Close enough. But yeah, bolster. It's a surge version of that. John, do you have any idea? Because we haven't seen this on any currently released unit, have we?
No, this is a brand new keyword, and we don't see it in Anakin, we don't see it with Maul. I think we have a strong suspicion as to where it's going to pop up, given how other generics have previously performed. It's an interesting keyword. There's a lot of discussion about what the value of a surge token is, and I do know some people will argue that a surge is better than a dodge, but worse than an aim. In many scenarios, and that puts these, if these are on the generics or whatever else, maybe Lando or Callus, now that we know that those exist, could create some really interesting situations. I will say it's probably not going to be on Lando, and the reason I say that is Rebels have so many surges natively. They don't get a lot of value out of surge tokens, so I can't see him having them. But like, imagine Callus having it, and like, hey, every turn I'm just going to give out two surges. Have fun with that.
If Callus has this, I'm gonna be very excited, because then you look at maybe trying to do
cool.
Callus Vader, and being able to give Vader surges would be awesome.
I think it's so nice that you guys have like these legitimate game reasons for why it wouldn't be on Lando. But all I can think of with Lando like bolstering other people from the films is in Return of the Jedi, when he is like, good luck to Han. He's not bolstering anyone. That's not happening. It's not going to be on him. It shouldn't be.
I do think it's important to note too that, as we said, just like spotter, just like take cover, you're not stacking these on a unit. You can't say, for example, let's say bolster comes on like a Gar unit. You can't stack them all into Padme so she can exemplar them wherever she wants. You do have to split up these surges between various targets in your general vicinity, and that's going to be pretty important. I think some people might make that mistake early on, especially if this X ends up being large. Like if someone's got like bolster 3, bolster 4, that's a big pool you're going to need to keep around your dude to keep those surge tokens coming. Mm-hmm. And you could potentially, if you isolate them, that keyword gets a lot weaker.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. I hadn't found that. This is why we're doing that, because people like me miss all these like the minutia. I'm accused of living under a rock by these gentlemen sometimes because I don't know the minutia nearly as well as they do. There's a reason why I never get asked to be a judge at events. I can't imagine why. So bolster X being different from spotter and take cover is I'm really glad you pointed that out. I wouldn't have noticed that until I did it wrong.
Well, it's actually the same as spotter and take cover.
Yeah. Is that what you just said? Gosh, dang it!
It's the same thing. You can't stack them. You can't put three. You can't take Vaders and put 3 aim tokens on your shores as much as you might want to.
Anytime I've used spotter 2, it's quite. I don't think I've screwed that up. But I might have. I'm sorry if I've.
Ladies and gentlemen, the man who lives under the rock.
You're the wrong person. To be fair, I also have been under the rock for the last 3 months because I'm living with another thing that lives under the rock.
Yes. All right. So moving on, so we can continue through the time period.
That's fair. We got to get to the good stuff.
Yeah. So, here's a big one that's sneaking up in the corner here. So under the clone trooper side of things, so it's specifically under the clone trooper subsection, there's this tiny little bullet up here that says a clone trooper unit can spend aim, dodge, and surge tokens of friendly clone trooper units at range 1 and in line of sight as if they were their own. John, what is missing from this paragraph? Or sentence?
We could devote an entire video to how this changes. You can't standby share anymore. Now, specifically, you can't clone standby share. Exemplar is still fine. I'm going to spoil that for us right now. Exemplar is still okay. But clones can no longer take 2 phase 1s, 2 phase 2s with Overwatch, and Castle. You're going to have to get a little more inventive than that if you want to keep doing that trick.
And having it, the buff to Padme, I think, is great. I love seeing hero characters for Gar get incentivized generally because they've got cool heroes. And obviously Rex is already very powerful, but you want to see, most Legion fans want to see the heroes be the ones who are the stars of the show, and really being able to do the cool things like that. So,
and one interesting note too, Padme's not the only exemplar character in the Gar faction anymore. Anakin also has the ability to exemplar. So there's some cool interactions there. I did talk about it a little bit when we I think I was over on the the stream that the captain did. It was over with the I want to get the number right. Yeah, over with the 82nd Legion. I was on the stream there with them for a little bit. We talked a little bit about Anakin. So on there specifically the fact that Anakin is one of the only Force users that can use Exemplar to transfer actions to units around him. So if he's not in the fight, he can still actually transfer those actions over via, Exemplar with standby sharing, with aims, with stuff like that, in order to make his other powerful army around him more powerful. That's a whole deep dive that we don't have the time to go into right now. But it is certainly worth investigating and exploring on your own, and I'm sure there'll be a bunch of commentary on that at another point. So the only other change on this page, as I zoom way out, down here, there's a little note that says minis being placed in cohesion are considered to be able to move through enemy trooper minis. That's just another quality of life thing there. So yes, you can move through things that you normally would be legally allowed to move through when getting into cohesion, when it comes to moving into cohesion and such like that. It doesn't actually block nothing blocks your movement unless it's like a ground vehicle that you specifically can't move through. Moving on, nothing on this page. Oh, okay. So there's a little keyword here, something referring to field commander. We will come back to this when we get down to F.
It's kind of spoiling a little something for later.
A little bit of a spoil there, but I think we're now at something that Ben really wants to talk about.
Yes, I'm so excited for this.
Compulsory move.
I'm not going to read it to you because y'all can read. I'm just going to tell you what it does because I know this one. This one I definitely looked up. Guys, we can compulsory move at the end of our turn if we want to. This is so good. This is such a big deal for bikes. I literally crashed a bike the other day because I set it up poorly in a tournament game, and I crashed a bike. I dealt 3 damage to my speeder bikes on their first activation. That should never happen again because you'll just pivot or change your speed tool to a 1-speed tool and make that not your compulsory move. So for one, it's going to make it a lot harder to crash. It means that you can literally be angled as if you were going to exit the board. And then instead of having your compulsory off the board, you'll just pivot and move. And it makes it so the last first is more powerful. So you can do your compulsory and then ideally aim and shoot. And then next turn, aim and shoot and compulsory. Or you could fire and double move way the heck out of there. It's a lot more likely that the first action on the subsequent turn for a repulsor vehicle can be I'm just going to fire and then I'm going to take action to move and then take my compulsory action to move again. And you can really, if you kind of clip the edge of them, you can really get far enough away that especially on a range 3 unit, they're not going to be shooting you back unless they come way out of position. So it makes bikes a lot more interesting. Staps a lot more interesting. Anything with a compulsory move, right? The T-47, which we are going to get to later. Oh, the T-47 too. So it's cool. It's vehicles in general are going to get a lot cooler with this RRG 2.0, and that's the cool thing about the compulsory move. The one I was thinking about this earlier today, something that we don't need to talk about this right now, but I was thinking about some minutia. If your compulsory move at the beginning of the turn would cause you to crash, could you choose to compulsory move at the beginning? And I think the answer is yes, but I don't know for sure.
Let's take a quick look here. So I see introduced tool, but
so my question for you, because you've played a lot of compulsory, far more than I have, is with this new rule, and even like the I think they still have like the halfway move rule where you can like move up to less than half the speed to not crash. Is there really any way to force compulsory vehicles to crash anymore?
So you used to be able to use Vader's might. I never saw this happen, but it was a dream scenario that I thought would be hilarious. You could use Vader's might to pick up bikes and just face them the wrong direction so that they would flee the board. And now they won't be able to do that. So the thing that you referenced about half the move speed, it's half the diameter of the base. So it's not a lot of room to back up. It's like if you just are barely clipping something, you can move back, or I think even forward, half the diameter of
Not
the base.
forward, it's only back.
Not forward, just backward. Okay, just backward. So I think that's like 0.75 inches, something like that. So it's not a lot of movement.
Okay.
Also,
Yeah, I'm trying to think of ways to still, like, in case I ever do have to play you again, how to like jam your bikes into situations where they will crash. And it seems like now it's going to be really, really hard to set that up unless you choose to not get yourself out of there, so you can take like an aim shoot, then you crash and burn. Like,
yeah, it's. I don't think it'll actually be possible to force a repulsor to crash anymore. What you're going to do is you're going to rob them of an action.
Which seems a lot more balanced. I mean, hardly no one plays bikes anyway. Like, feels like it's just me a lot of the time, and I get made fun of for it. I win with it.
A lot of people play stabs, though.
Yeah, yes. Stabs are a lot more popular.
And that's going to be relevant for them.
Speaking of stabs, there's a nice little nugget at the bottom here that we all want to discuss. It's if a unit has the AI move keyword, staffs, or stabs rather, and an effect requires it to perform a compulsory move, the compulsory move does not satisfy the requirements of AI move. So for a stab unit, if they don't have a face-up order token, I don't think is it just AI move on stabs, or is it more than that? I can't remember off the top of my head, because I don't
know.
Separatists.
I'd pull it up real quick on TTA, but the community crashed it.
I think John's looking it up right now. But as a note, so if they
it's AI move.
It's AI move. So staps without an order token will have to both do a move first, or they can choose to do like a double move. They have to move twice during their activation, and one of them has to be at full speed. Is essentially how it works out. So your compulsory and one of your actions will be a move in that regard. So that opens up some interesting things. All right, moving on to
a brand new word.
AI move just be a pivot. Real quick.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I was curious.
So there's a new keyword here that is a lot. I haven't personally read through all of it. Does anyone have a TLDR on this? Because it's not on any unit we've seen. This does seem a little more up Lando's sleeve, if you catch my drift. I'm not gonna lie.
Literally up a sleeve.
Yeah.
If it is something that's on Lando, I think players should be required to wear long sleeves and keep command cards in their sleeves. And it's just part of playing Lando.
They got the little switch thing that comes out of their wrist or whatever.
Yeah. Also, if you don't wear a cape, you lose a victory point.
There you go. I agree with that. So
that's
contingencies, TLDR for people. From what I've read in here, now again, I skimmed it, but it's essentially, if you're familiar with the concept of a sideboard from Magic the Gathering, or like a card game where you have optional cards that you can choose to like put in before a match, this is somewhat similar, where contingencies allows you to bring additional command cards beyond the 7 that would normally be in your hand, and then when you're choosing a command card, you have the option to, I believe it says, I think you can discard that command card to replace it with a card out of your contingencies pile or something like that. So there's some interesting, tricky plays that are going to be able to happen here. Yep.
It has to be the same number of pips. So the very first thing I see is if you're assuming that you can play this with Lando, you got Han, you got Lando. Han's got a 0 pip. You cannot contingencies that card. It is a 0 pip card. So
because it only says it counts as 1 when you're building the hand. Right?
Yeah, but it doesn't. Once you're in game, when you're using this keyword, it doesn't count. So that's just something to note. And if we get anything else like that, any weird pip cards, you can imagine that that's probably going to be the same thing. The other interesting thing I noticed is that your command hand and your contingency hand are treated separately. So if we ever get like a command card that's like, look at your opponent's hand, they'll never see your contingency. They're always hidden information, which is a really, really powerful boon to have. Because depending on how many, and this is an X keyword, this isn't even like contingencies you just get a set number. Imagine if you have like contingencies 3. You have and you're playing like rebels.
Oh,
You could
wow.
have this entire command suite plus 3 other cards. Like, it seems insanely good. Think of all of the possibilities. Like like you're looking like, I wish I could just have like 3 2-pips and just pick them as I go. Now you can.
Yeah, that's something I've actually been wanting for a very long time in this game, is a little bit more play with the command hand. So I'm happy to see something come in that gives us a little bit more play there.
Yeah. Another weird kind of caveat note. There's it says that if you legally can't play a contingency card, like if you as the player screw it up, you just don't get to play a command card. You just burn your turn.
Ooh, okay, so make sure you know what you're doing there.
Like if
It's
you
not
play
even
it,
standing orders. It's like nothing.
you don't get anything. So like it's one of those situations like, okay, let's say you're playing Luke. Let's say that you contingencies into a Luke card, but Luke's dead. You just don't play anything. Like and that's where it's going to be interesting, is like what can legally be played, because a card that has no legal targets can still be legally, right? Like say you had what's the rebel 2-pip that targets supports?
Turning the tide.
Turning the tide, yeah.
You could play that without having any supports. It's still legal, right?
Yeah, you can play it, you just don't get to issue orders.
Which is basically the same thing, but
you could have priority for drawing from your stack.
Yeah. And you do also get the effect.
Yeah. So my thought is the only illegal thing would probably be playing a command card with a character that is no longer on.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's enough discussion there. We'll see what comes of that in the future. I'm very excited for that. But moving on here as we work our way through the seas, little covert ops quality of life thing here. They're treated as an operative for the entire game, is essentially the gist of that. Okay. So what's deployment? Got some clarifications here. Oh, so this is actually really important for those of you who like the occupier tank.
Oh, this is one of the best things that come out of this. This for me is the oblong rule.
So this first part here that I'm highlighting says each mini with a round base must be completely within their deployment zone. You can't cross the imaginary boundary. However, this next one here that says that units with an oblong base, such as the TX-225 DFW Occupier Combat Assault Tank, may extend beyond the boundary of a player's deployment zone so long as its base is touching the edge of the battlefield within that deployment zone, and at least half the base is within the boundary of the deployment zone. So on battle lines, your occupier can deploy with its front out of the deployment zone. Congratulations, everybody. You do not have to do weird reposition shenanigans. You are allowed to legally deploy your occupier in a decent spot.
Now, here's the fun thing. I'm looking forward, right? And this is, they're saying on oblong base. There's going to be more oblong base. Now, you're thinking hot dog style. And I'm sitting here thinking hamburger style, right? Like, think if the Hailfire droid comes on like a long, like this side base, and you can like start it like turned awkwardly, just so you still get the bonus for like distance or whatever. You just want to troll people, and then you can do so many silly things. I think it's also kind of fun because you can do stuff with like rollout, where you can put your because you just have to be touching the edge. You can have your occupier basically completely out of the deployment zone almost on something like rollout, and then immediately take that move. And you can cover a lot of distance with this versus having to be, fully within your deployment zone. I mean, you're looking at possibly 3-4 inches of difference, and that can make a lot of difference in a game.
Yeah, especially on like a deployment like battle lines where you're only range 4 apart at the beginning.
And I also want to call out that in that second pip that's fresh there that you can see Nerfley's got highlighted at the end, it does say that only at least half of the base has to be within the boundary. That means that something on major offensive, where you've got only range 1 out to the center, you could deploy like we've been talking about with battle lines, and also off center a little bit, so that you are hanging out like the left side of your major offensive deployment.
Yeah, as long as half of your mini is within the deployment zone. Yeah. And that's, of course, something you're going to want to talk with your opponent on, determining exactly what half is, right? It's basically you're going to find the center point of the mini, and then you're just going to basically take like a range ruler and like squiggle it around to make sure that you're halfway in.
Here I am.
Answering a question that came up on Twitch as well from Zorvix. So it said, does it say that you can't discard standing orders or that you can get it back? I'm not sure in regards to contingencies. That's something that I'm going to encourage you to review because we don't necessarily have the time to go back and look at that right now. I also have no idea because this is the first time I've seen this keyword. So if they mentioned it in there, that would be answer me, or it might be something that we want to. Actually, what's interesting is, actually talking about the equal pips, you'd have to have a 4-pip contingency in order to replace your standing orders. Maybe that happens. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe we get other 4-pip cards.
It's very possible.
Yeah, it's very possible to maybe have a 4-pip. So that should answer that question for now. And then we have changes to detonate, which I talked with someone earlier about this. Apparently, the changes to detonate basically say that they're like all the rules for detonate have been condensed together now. Like whatever token is detonating, there's not any like actual like functional changes as far as I know in the detonate section here. Most of it's just a lot of clarification.
I believe there were problems with sometimes things referred to Bosk's poison bombs and other things referred to Sabine's bombs and other things referred to, sabotage.
Even the Cad Bane token.
Yeah. And it was like, well, it says it's for this. Is it also? Yes. It's something blowing up.
It's literally being like, this is how it's supposed to work as intended.
Yep. Okay. So streamlining there.
So review it, double check us, make sure you know something is wrong. If you want to be going through this with us, you can actually, can someone grab the link to the RRG? I think I actually might have it here. I'll go ahead and post it in chat. If I have it available. Okay, so we'll get that posted in chat here on both YouTube and Twitch, so you can follow along with us if you want to and read through. Let us know if we miss anything, of course. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. I don't have that.
Okay, so on the next page, we get another little spicy thing that's snuck in here. We get the keyword direct, which is new, and this seems interesting, to say the least.
This keyword.
Yeah. The ability, so what it basically sums down to is a unit with direct. They have, what is this? So the direct keyword itself always specifically states the unit name, rank, or type of this other unit. And each command phase during the issue order step, a unit with direct keyword may issue an order to a friendly unit at range 1 to 2 that meets the unit specifications of the direct keyword. So this is kind of like half of Entourage, is the best way that I'm kind of thinking about it. Where, Director Krennic, if he has Death Troopers at range 1 to 2, he can give them a free order and also gets an extra Special Forces slot in his army. So he can take 3 snipers and Death Troopers. This is just the order part of Entourage is what this kind of seems like. And if this is going to be in the new Clone Wars factions, this is going to be really good, I think, depending on what you can direct to.
I do not see this being a thing for CIS because it trivializes giving out orders to your core. Like if the T series can direct, you no longer need uplinks. You no longer need to worry about your orders. You just do it. I could see it in Gar because Gar has order control problems, and that would be interesting. But I don't think CIS is going to get it, honestly.
What about you, Ben? You got any thoughts?
I think it's a really great keyword on anything because you compared it to Entourage, and it's half of Entourage in that it doesn't expand the slots when you're army building, but it's better than Entourage in that it doesn't it say it's for a whole like type of unit, like it.
So whatever, so like for example, with like how Entourage Death Troopers or Entourage Imperial Royal Guard,
it's a type of unit. Oh, it says unit name, rank, or type.
So it can be specific. It could be like, it could be like, for example, just a hypothetical. It could be Entourage, like, I don't know, maybe like something that we could have seen, like if there was an Errata on previous or something. You get Entourage Magna Guards or something like that.
I figured it out. CIS is going to get it. They're going to get direct heavy. A direct vehicle, I'm sorry. I would be so happy to see that at CIS. That's why you play the T-Series, so you can just have a vehicle list.
Maybe. Who knows?
That would be so cool. I'm on board. 100%. Give me direct vehicle.
Yeah, this is going to be really strong. If this allows me to give 5s in order, if this is on the clone generic. Oof.
We already talked about how broken 5s is.
Oof.
I don't need getting him for free every turn.
Hey, I found a thing in the next thing that I'm excited about.
Oh, let's go ahead and take a look at what you're looking at. Disabled?
Yeah.
Let's see.
I didn't know this. I've skimmed it once, but I hadn't seen this yet. I missed this one. It always bugged me. You used to be able to get a disabled token and still strafe twice.
Oh.
No. No more.
So you cannot reverse, and you must spend 2 move actions to strafe. If you are disabled, you are disabled. Quality of life, cleaning things up, excellent.
Working as intended.
Okay, there's a little note here under displacement in the top here. I'm going to go ahead and highlight it because my cursor is not a thing, thanks to my streaming settings. But up here, just a quick note, you can be displaced multiple times during an activation or during a turn. So, excuse me, so you cannot gain more than 1 suppression token doing the displaced in a single activation. So, if a unit like a ground vehicle, for example, moved into you and displaced you, and then moved into you again and displaced you, what'll happen is you still only get one suppression token. You don't get multiple.
It's also, I think, to prevent the spamming that we saw a little bit of with the Occupier, where you would move into something and then
reposition. Yeah.
Again. Now it'll still displace them twice, but they'll only get the 1 suppression.
Yeah.
So
actually, technically, you could displace them 4 times and they'd still get 1 suppression. So
and it's supposed to de-incentivize you because that takes a lot of time, and that if you're gonna try to make that play, you want to make it as little time consuming as possible. No more suppression.
Absolutely. Any comments, Ben?
No, that looks good. I want to know which of you Clone Wars nerds is going to teach me about who has Jim So. I don't know what that is.
Oh. So that's Anakin.
Okay.
It's a lightsaber form.
How do you say it? Gemso?
Demso, I think.
Demso?
It's either Gemso or Demso. It's one of the 2 silent, to my recollection. I don't remember which specifically. But
Switch every other time. You'll be right half the time. You'll be wrong the other half.
Exactly. It's correct 100% of the time, 50% of the time. So, with Demso, I'm just gonna say it that way because if I'm wrong, I'll get made fun of for it later. What you can do with Anakin, and I'm very excited to do this, is whenever he spends a dodge token. So if he's being shot at or attacked in melee, if he spends a dodge token, the enemy suffers 1 wound. Straight up. So spend a dodge, I think it's 1 or more. If you spend 1 or more dodges, they take a wound. So what this is it's a guaranteed deflect, but you can't do it more than once. So if you slash him, he will there's a good chance if he has a dodge and you shoot at him, you're gonna take a wound if he spends that dodge, guaranteed. That's basically the TLDR on it.
Deflect meets force choke.
Yeah, kinda. Yeah, that's actually a really good way because it's just a guaranteed wound coming back at you. So if you only have a heavy weapon and a leader, and you want to shoot at Anakin, and he has a dodge, you gotta really think about if you want to keep that heavy weapon around, especially if Anakin's close enough to maybe move and choke that unit out on the following activation if he hasn't gone yet. So things to look at. Oh boy. Oh, we're getting into some of the fun stuff now.
Is this where the fun begins?
This is exactly where the fun begins. We're looking at, on the other side of the page over here, there's some blue text under the embark and disembark section of the RRG. Shall we take a look at it? I think we shall. So, normally the transport rules were really clunky. No one ever really put anything into transport because of how weird it was. I'm gonna read this because I also want to know what it does. I'll skip over any unnecessary stuff, but we'll go through it a bit at a time because I think there's a bit to unpack here. So, to embark into a transport with the transport X open keyword, a unit uses one action to perform a speed 1 move that puts its unit leader into base contact with a friendly vehicle that can transport that type of unit. And it is the same thing for the transport closed keyword, which is something that we haven't seen yet as well. It's been
That is not entirely correct.
We have seen transport closed?
No. It's so getting into an open transport takes one action.
Oh.
Getting into a transport takes your entire activation.
That's what I get for skimming people. So getting into a closed transport takes your entire activation. Getting into an open transport takes one action, which makes sense. You know, if you have to open a door and wait for a door to open, it's going to take a little longer to do a thing if you're getting inside of something. Because I'm assuming closed transport would be like, I don't know, like the Bradley assault vehicle is coming to mind in like modern day actual things. I apologize if my audio is a little choppy. I'm not sure what's causing that, but a Bradley assault vehicle. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say I just muted myself and listened, and it sounds like sometimes it's fine and sometimes it's choppy, but nothing we can do about it for now.
Okay, could be my computer. I've got a bunch of stuff running right now. With the closed, with that closed and open transport, with the closed transport, there's like the Bradley assault vehicle where you can fit a squad of infantry in the back of it, and it's like complete armored vehicle that's buttoned up tight so they don't get shot when they're inside of it. That's what I'm picturing closed transport means. Where like open transport, like we've seen on the occupier tank and in the land speeder, you're exposed to the open air. The transport open keyword on the occupier tank is literally like soldiers in World War II jumping on the back of a Sherman tank, where you're just sitting on it and getting taken for a ride. Anyway, moving on. So that unit is removed from the battlefield, and a pair of ID tokens are placed, one near the base of the vehicle and one next to the unit. That is pretty standard. I believe that was very similar to what it was before, if not the same as it was. And then to disembark, a unit that is being transported uses one action to place its unit leader in base contact with the vehicle, and then performs a speed 1 move with that unit. That's the thing that's the same. So whether it's an open transport or a closed transport, it only takes one action to get out of it.
Yeah.
And you can use your standby token to get off.
Really?
Yep, it's on the next page.
Oh, well, let's go and take a look at that. Oh, did I skip it?
It's at the top of 43.
Ah, right here on the highlight on the stream there. So you can use a standby to disembark. Interesting. Very interesting. So I think there'll be some more info on that later on in the RRG, and we'll talk about some crazy things you can do with the occupier now. Spoiler, big guns in the back of an occupier seem really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also important to note, it hasn't changed, but it is important, you cannot disembark into melee.
Cannot disembark into melee. Noted.
So everyone who's thinking about maybe sticking an IRG in the back of an occupier and pile driving out of it, it's a dream that unfortunately cannot be fulfilled.
But since it only takes one action, you can move out and then go into melee. And
then you can charge, that's fine.
Yeah.
But you couldn't use a standby to pull it off.
Okay, the flawed unit keyword, this is specifically applies to Anakin. There is a flawed card, it's a command card. I know some people have gone over that already, so we're not going to spend too much time on it, but one of your turns when you're playing Anakin, your opponent gets to say Anakin doesn't get an order, thanks to the flawed command card that he brings with them and grants to your opponent. So look into that on your own time, because I really want to talk about the next section, because there's some incredibly spicy stuff going on in the field commander part of the world right now.
Well, then do it.
Yeah, so Force Commander, sorry, there's a question that came up here on Twitch for me from Force Commander Krugar saying you can attack from the tank into people who are in melee. I think that's covered in another section, and we will get there.
We'll get there.
Yeah, it'll be under the transport sections. It'll be later on the RRG. We'll get there because I just don't want to say it wrong at this time.
The teaser is that if you know. Well, you know how when you lived out in the country when you were growing up, and you'd be bored because you're out in the country, and it'd be Friday night, and you'd get into the back of your best friend's pickup truck, and then you'd just drive on by and mailboxes.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is.
We'll
So
get there.
you're saying Luke gets to do that in a land speeder now?
I'm pretty sure that that's what we'll find out. But I think that's the gist of the visual.
Speaking of interesting things that happen with vehicles, though, oh boy, Field Commander. So if you take an upgrade that has the Field Commander keyword, it has its normal effect that it had before, where it could be nominated for neutral command cards. However, now when you take it, you can ignore the commander requirement for your army when building it. Which means in something like, specifically on the Saber Tank and the AAT right now, because those are the only two things that have the Field Commander keyword, the T-Series or Ayla Secura can act as your commander. And the way they do that is when you deploy, if you don't have a commander in your army, when you deploy the Field Commander unit, mark that unit with the commander token. However, it keeps its current rank, and as per the rules of Field Commander, it can be nominated as a commander when collecting a neutral command card that's played. In addition, while it has the commander token, friendly units at range 1 to 3 can treat their courage value as 2 when checking whether they panic. That's fantastic. A little note at the end too, if the Field Commander unit is defeated, you do nominate another commander as normal. But oh my god.
And the piece that we skipped over earlier that talked about Field Commander said that if your army has a commander and a Field Commander, if the commander is defeated, you may nominate the Field Commander as the new commander, just like you could choose to do any other trooper.
Is that?
Now, here's a stinker. Here's a stinker for you. If I take a Covert Ops character, now this isn't legal yet, but in the future, if I took a Covert Ops character and a Fields Commander, how does that work?
When do you make the decision for Field Commander? You may choose to ignore.
So if you do, you may choose to ignore the minimum commander unit requirement. So if by taking Iden or Cassian, you are technically not ignoring the minimum commander requirement, would be my understanding.
If you chose to drop them to use Covert Ops, then I'm pretty sure that was it even under Covert Ops?
So one note that I'm seeing reading this, I don't see anything in the text here that says you can nominate a unit with Field Commander as your commander if your existing commander has been defeated. The only note at the bottom there says if the unit with Field Commander and the commander token is defeated, a new commander must be nominated as normal, which would not allow you to choose vehicles under the normal rules.
I'm glad you said that. So it's you're looking at page 27. To promote a commander, a player chooses any of their trooper units.
I'm not looking at 27. Looking at 45 under Field Commander. But the normal rules for commander, to my recollection, is you have to choose a trooper. You can't choose a vehicle.
Yes, that would normally be true. So page 27 says the new commander upgrade process. To promote a commander.
Oh, okay, never mind.
A player chooses any of their trooper units or units with the Field Commander keyword on the battlefield and places a commander token next to that unit. Now, what this doesn't still solve is what John brought up, because that specifically talks. That's a subpoint on page 27 about if a player's last commander is defeated. It doesn't say what to do if you use Covert Ops, and I didn't see in Covert Ops any new blue text that would suggest that.
This is all speculation. They might just give us an official answer once it's an option.
Yeah.
I was curious what you thought. Also, we did have a question from Krugar. Do they get the Courage 2 bubble? Yes, it is a range 1 to 3 Courage bubble from the vehicle that you're driving.
Yeah,
which is actually a larger because it's got a larger radius. It's bigger.
Yeah.
If you're drawing it off that Saber Tank or AAT base, you're getting a couple extra inches there on your courage bubble. So yeah, that is That's awesome. I can't wait to see some double AAT lists that come out that don't have Dooku or Grievous in them. I know I know one of our other teammates, Talk Polite, has been kicking around an idea for, since he saw this, he's been kicking out an idea for a Maul and AAT list where the AAT is the commander, because Maul is, of course, inoperative. Which also, that we might see a little more Cad Bane on the table now. Cad Bane and an AAT, instead of having to take, like, Grievous and an AAT and Cad, which I've seen some people do in the past. It gives them a little more flexibility. Now, as a current note, we don't have generic command cards for the Clone Wars factions yet. So you'll probably have to, in the meantime, talk with your opponent about maybe running double generic cards like we did way back in the beginning of the game. Don't know if that'll fly competitively, though. So just talk with your opponent if you're doing a for fun game. You know, double ambush, double push, double assault will probably do fine.
We've seen one of the generics for each one, and they're vehicle focused.
That is true.
So you want to include those 1-pips, you go right ahead.
Maybe the last thing on this is I did just go into Covert Ops and double check. As written, Covert Ops does demand that you promote a Core or Special Forces trooper. So as of right now, if that situation were to arise in the future, then that would be kind of a bummer. So I bet they'll fix that because that doesn't seem intentional. Yeah, but it's not relevant yet. So
I think it'd be interesting. But you know, if we do get a field commander for the Galactic Civil War factions, I think it may be updated at that time, hopefully, because it would be really nice to be able to, you know, if you can maybe run, you know, Iden with an occupier, and the occupier can become the commander. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is more for the homebrewers till then.
Yep. All right. Scrolling down. So, some clarification on immune deflect, which just added Demso to it. So, Demso cannot be used against immune deflect weapons. Noted. Continuing down, some changes to incognito. So, our lovely friend K2SO.
And the Dark Droids. We now have 2 units.
Yes. Yes, they do.
And spooks.
So.
The DRKs, is that what it is?
Yeah. Dirk 1 or
Do
whatever.
Do people call them Darks?
I would call them Dark Droids. Yeah.
I just call them Dark Droids.
So yeah, for K2SO here, for those lovely players, the clarifications are, units currently under the effect of incognito are not treated as unit leaders for the purposes of objective cards. Flat. So they cannot be given tokens or anything like that. Example of those include bombing run, breakthrough, intercept, key positions, and payload. So you cannot score on intercept or KP with K2 while incognito is active. We have finally put that to bed. They do not count if their incognito is active. And an incognito token may be used to mark that a unit is under incognito. Remove the token if the unit attacks, defends against an enemy attack, or performs an objective card action. Okay. So
there's a small note here that somebody did bring up. Technically, if you have like a Vader or a Sith and they choke out a Dark Droid, they don't lose incognito.
Because it's an effect, not an attack?
Yeah, it's not an attack. He doesn't technically remove the token.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a really niche application, but apparently choking out a Dark Droid does not get you what you want.
Yeah, because it's effect, it's not an attack. So, all right. Juyo Mastery, this is Darth Maul's ability that if he is wounded, he gets an extra action, and you can only take up to 2 move actions. Pretty simple, there's a lot of clarifying rules text, but that's important. Now, one other very relevant change down under the leader section, now that we have multiple leaders, including some old friends getting the multiple wounds treatment, where like Fives and Echo and the Mando heavies, where they have 2 wounds each, we have a clarification on what happens to that unit. So if a mini with the leader keyword and a wound threshold of 2 is defeated while in a unit with a wound threshold of 1, replace one of the remaining minis in that unit as normal, and then assign the mini with the leader keyword 1 wound token. So essentially what you're doing is you are equalizing the wounds. So if 5s is the only one that can be seen, and there's a clone that's hiding behind a wall, the unit takes 2 wounds, 5s dies, 5s replaces that other clone, and then gets a wound token to mark that there is only 1 wound remaining in the unit. This is how a lot of people were doing it already, but now we have official clarification on that's how that works, which is very nice.
Brad, what if it goes the other way? Like if I have a T series and a B2 unit, because I would totally never do that.
I don't see anything clarifying that, so I don't know. I got no rules for you on that at this point. We might see something when those eventually come out. I don't know exactly when they're releasing. My hunch is like January, because we haven't seen anything as of yet. Maybe sooner, hopefully sooner, but we might get something at that time.
The other thing I want to say about this change with leader is if the scenario happens with 5s like Brad just described, that means that every time you keep taking like a single wound onto that unit, you'll have to keep killing 5s, and he'll have to keep switching where he is.
Yeah,
because he's not a wound.
yeah.
So it's definitely disadvantageous for you to be in this position, because you're gonna have to keep messing with your cohesion and with where your unit is.
Ping-ponging 5s around.
Yeah. So don't let 5s be the only one seen on a full unit, guys. It's not gonna be a good time.
Please let 5s be the only thing that I see. I would love to continually delete him off the field.
All right. Now we are getting to the light transport X, open or closed. Now
And
I
it
think
mostly just says we're gonna look somewhere else, right?
let's see. Keyword allows a vehicle to transport friendly units. Exactly 1 mini. Light transport X, open closed. Yeah, it says look somewhere else. So we're gonna eventually get to page 76, which is where it tells us to go. Clarification on loadout here. It says equipped upgrade cards can be swapped with only set aside upgrade cards of the same type and equal or lesser points cost. So it needs to be the same type. You can't like do some other shenanigans that I can't even think in my head right now because I was already playing it like this.
Iden's repeater and then a bunch of training and gear slots as her loadout.
Oh.
It was an idea somebody had. They were like, I take 15 points for Iden's repeater, but I don't take the other gun. I take...
Oh, so it's some cheaty way to get around the rules. Gotcha. Okay. It works like you think it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that work like they are supposed to, on page 59, look at this. This is another new one to me. I hadn't noticed this one before.
You're talking about the trooper movement summary?
Yeah! R2-D2 doesn't use the silhouette to move over the thing, so it still doesn't make sense. Dang it. But Wookiees, it's better. You don't use the silhouette to determine the height when you're checking to see what models can move over. So it's
so R2 can technically move over things that he can't actually get over with his own head, though. So that's good to know.
No, he can't. If using silhouettes do not use the mini to measure. You're right. Yes. I read it backwards. Oh, good. Okay, so, do not use the mini to measure.
All minis have the same height for movement. Your ARC troopers that are way up on a super high jetpack do not get to move over a wall because the top of their antenna is sticking over it. You have to use the template. So really important for those awesome jetpack sculpts. So working as we thought. All right. Observation tokens. These are the keywords that refer to those dark droids we were talking about earlier, correct?
Yeah.
So it's the token.
You skipped one thing with repulsors, which is simply that they can only reverse if they have hover, which is just a clarification. I thought we knew that.
That would be the Saber and the AAT currently, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So observation tokens. Summing this up quickly, John, would you like to do that for me, actually? Because I need a drink.
Fair. I got to be a little quieter because she fell asleep. So, yeah, I know. Great timing.
Your energy just went, ooh.
Observation
I'm in dad
tokens.
mode.
Yeah, observation tokens are budget A. In the sense that you take an observation, let's say, what Darks have on observe 3, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
You put 3 observation tokens out, one on 3 separate units, it has to be, or something like that. Anyway, any unit, while attacking that unit that has an observation token, can spend that token to reroll one die. So I say it's a budget aim. The interesting thing, the nice thing is that because this token is going to be persistent through the round, it's not like an aim where if you roll really hot, you wasted that aim. The observation will stick around for the next attack, or it'll stick around until you need it. So while it's a budget aim, it's also situationally better in some ways.
Also, as a note on observe, just to make a quick clarification there, observe is you choose one unit and it receives X tokens. So it's not like the take cover or spotter discussion before. It is one unit gets X.
Yeah, exact opposite. So yeah, so let's say you stick 3 on something, and then it's just 3 one-off rolls, which is nice because how Legion's rerolls work. You can just go, I only need this one die. Roll. Didn't get it. Roll. I didn't get it. Roll. I didn't get it. Or you go, roll, I got it on the first one, and now you have 2 observation tokens for later.
So it really benefits focusing a unit.
Yeah,
which is largely what you should be doing.
Yeah, you don't waste action economy with necessarily with observation tokens like you might with an aim. While it's always great to roll really high and not need your aims, observations being persistent are kind of helpful. Of course, if you're playing clones, you don't care either way.
Yeah,
I really like the observation token mechanic. It's a really cool support role. I'm excited to see what else is going to have it in the future.
Yeah, me too. Okay, moving on as we work our way. We're about halfway through the alphabet now.
Move along.
Little redefinition of melee range. So
we're more than halfway. We're on page 67.
Excellent. Melee range is when a mini is in base contact with an enemy mini. Those minis are at melee range of each other. Just so everyone knows that it does work how you thought it worked.
Rules as intended.
Yes. I love how much cleanup they did in here. So restore. Have we seen that keyword?
Restore is a clarification of how you bring back models, if I remember correctly.
Oh, did they combine treat and repair under the same thing?
I hope so.
I think it's
that's what it is. So it's treat and repair. I now have the same rule set. So and it's called restore.
Or Legion Visual Guide just did this release about repair X capacity Y. We have to redo that, guys.
Oh man. So yeah, basically what it says is to restore a mini to a unit. That unit must have had one or more minis defeated that round. Choose a mini that was defeated and bring it back. If a unit's minis have been defeated. If a card's players aren't have ability, if the units have all been defeated, they can no longer be restored. If a card in a player's army have the ability to restore minis, it is recommended the player track them in by putting wound tokens on it or something like that. So that's just, I guess, a little more clarification there. Oh yeah, so there's a reference over here under treat and repair, or under repair, that says to reference restore. So maybe they just did some reorganization there.
Restore is literally just it's defining how you bring models back from off the table.
Yeah. A little clarification on scale here. So, okay, so this is clarification when it comes to walls with scale. So a unit with the scale keyword can use scale in combination with a clamber action to move up and over a fence wall or other obstruction that the mini cannot be placed on top of up to height 1. So if you have a height 1 wall and General Grievous is in base contact with it, he can scale and clamber with his first action to go up and over the wall. Or, for example, Wookiees, which now have the scale keyword, can do the same.
Spoilers.
He takes that white check, though, right?
What was that?
He takes that white check, though, because he's taking that clamber action.
No, because scale makes you not roll for clamber.
Because he's an expert climber. Scale combines
scale
expert
is
climber
expert climber and unhindered, as well as a free action.
To specify, it was still a clamber action in conjunction.
Well, because you have to, it's a move. So it's the way scale normally works. Is before or after you complete a move action, you can, or is it a move? Or whatever the definition is. Whenever you do a thing that involves movement, before or after, you can do a free clamber action, is what scale is. So what this is saying is you can make that action a clamber and combine it with a scale to go up and over. That's all it's clarifying. As up to height 1. You cannot
You can't double clamber up to height 2 with
to height
this
2.
for free.
Yes, you cannot double clamber up to height 2 on top of a tower. That does not work.
Wait, yes again. A
No.
unit with a scale feature can scale in combination with the clamber action to go up or down.
Oh, never mind. It's
Oh,
in the
it's just the
black
first
text,
one there.
so you can do both.
You can already do
dos.
that.
Yes.
You can already do that, and then we were distracted by the clarification. Not a lot of people
Yeah,
seem
I
to play with
saw the
fences.
bullet further down that says that when you clamber, you don't roll white dice. So yeah, it's just to make sure Grievous isn't defeated by a lily fence.
By a
Yes.
chain link fence.
Yep.
It became for a little while.
Okay. So there's a little clarification on small for you Iden players out there that like to bring Dio along, or technically ID10 in Imperial speak. The clarification here is when determining line of sight for a non-area attack, small is ignored. So
Yeah.
Dio no longer diffuses bombs for free. Iden isn't eligible to be hit by area weapons like detonate tokens with detonate if Dio is within range of it, is what that means. So
No checking your minefields with Dio just for laugh.
yeah. So
Which is good.
yes,
It's good change.
good little
Good
clarification
fix.
there. All right, the addition to Speeder X here is what we discussed earlier with the compulsory moves. So we did talk about that, so we can skip on by that as we move our way down. Again, discussion of strafing here is what we discussed earlier. Again, they're just putting it in multiple sections, so you don't have to go digging for this links to this to links to this in order to find answers to things. You can just go to a specific entry and it should have your question there, or to answer to your question there.
If you're wondering why these rule books keep getting, or these RRGs keep getting longer and longer, it's they're making it so you don't have to search the entire RRG. Things are redundant.
Yeah, even though hyperlinks are very fun. Although this note, now that I'm looking at it now, specifically says that when performing a strafe, a repulsor can move onto or over a piece of terrain that is less than the height of the mini, or specifically the unit leader.
Just like moving forward.
Just like moving forward. So again, simplifying things. We talked about tactical when we talked about agile. It's again the same thing, just you cannot get free aims for doing non-standard moves, which is basically anything that would not involve the movement tool, for reference. Or, free moves like No Time for Sorrows or scout moves. Those do not generate tokens anymore. All right. The Tempted keyword allows Anakin to take dark side powers. The timing section here, I guess this is a clarification on how timing works. So, Ben, do you want to go into this?
Sure. I haven't read it, so I'll learn together with
All
you
right.
now. All right. So if a unit has access to more than one effect that takes place during the same timing window, the player controlling that unit decides the order of those effects. So relevant for complex characters like Cad Bane, equipped with ascension cables, moving into base contact with the side of a height 1 building. The player controlling Cad Bane can choose to trigger his steady keyword to perform an attack, then trigger his scale keyword to place Cad Bane on top of the building, or that player can choose to place Cad Bane on top of the building and then perform an attack.
Okay.
So, and then in relation with that, standby and detonate effects trigger before all other abilities. So if you move up to that wall and there's a mine there, it's gonna boom before Cad Bane can run up.
And at worst case scenario, if two things happen at the exact same time, the blue player chooses which goes first. So if somehow two standbys from both opposite sides are triggered simultaneously, what would happen is the blue player would choose which effect goes off first, or in what order. So just some clarification there.
Blue.
Oh man, there's a lot of blue here. So we are finally into transport, and we have the information for transport closed, which we will get into. So this specifically is transport. This is talking about, this is some links to other hyperlinks to other sections of the RRG, and this is discussing that, you know, you can deploy a unit into something with the transport X keyword that's eligible at the beginning. And now we have transport closed, which is a lot. I'm not going to read all of this because this is a whole ton.
Do you want the cliff notes?
Yes, please, John, give us the cliff notes.
Okay, so basically, when you're being transported in a closed vehicle, it's like it used to be basically for transport open. You're essentially removed from the battlefield. You're not able to really do a whole lot. And this is important because transport open got a major overhaul. So you cannot perform any actions except for disembarking. So that's how it used to be with open transports. Spend tokens, though you can gain them, which is a little bit different than it used to be. You can't be targeted by an attack. You're essentially in this. You are removed from the table for all intents and purposes. As far as it does say you can suffer wounds as normal, so you can still choke them.
So yeah, you could probably be choked, or if, for example, if the vehicle, I think that's mostly there for if the vehicle gets shot down, I think you would suffer a wound. There's like some other stuff there, or if you have an effect that would like give you a wound, like with Darth Maul's command card, for example, I think you would technically still suffer that wound as normal.
Yeah. You also, with that in mind, you do still have a courage bubble if you're a commander.
Yes.
And that does measure from the closed transport space, so you do extend yourself a little bit that way.
Oh man, too bad we can't put. Well, and actually, with Field Commander, we actually can put a commander in an AAT, so never mind.
Yeah. There's some interesting things there. You can issue orders, obviously.
One other note with closed transport. So yeah, game text on objective cards does not apply to units that are being transported. So that's for both open and closed, I think. Maybe we'll see with open because that's going to be coming next. If a vehicle is in base contact with a piece of terrain or another mini, the transported unit is not considered to be in base contact with that piece of terrain or other mini if it's in a closed transport.
You can double up with that for KPs, basically.
Again, there is a wall between you and whatever the actual vehicle is touching in a closed transport.
Now, that said, let's talk about open transport.
Oh boy. Here we go.
When you're in an open transport...
I'll be right back. Hold on.
All right.
I guess we're going to take a short hiatus.
Well, just continue.
Okay. So you can spend any token you want when you're in open transport. While a unit is being transported, all its weapons lose the fixed keywords, which is critical for a particular gun that everybody's thinking of. While that unit is being transported, it can perform any action with the following limitations. Basically, what it comes down to is if the vehicle moves once, you can take your action as normal. Nice.
I'm so excited for this part. I'm ready.
If the vehicle moves twice, you only get one action. So it comes down to if the thing's flying super fast or driving super fast, you're holding on for dear life, you only get one action. If it's moving at a steady pace, you get your full activations. Now, the previous rules for transport open were your opponent shoots the vehicle takes damage, you take a wound. That is no longer the case. The vehicle and the transport unit are now considered separate entities. You can target the vehicle. If the vehicle takes damage, the transported unit, nothing happens to them. Unless the vehicle crashes and burns. If you want to target the unit that's being transported, they have heavy cover, but they can be shot as per normal. So what it really comes down to is open transports are just mobile heavy cover. They are heavy cover that moves you, so you don't have to move yourself. Now, if you think of a particular unit that wants to sit in heavy cover and doesn't like to move, I can think of a single Imperial unit and a very saucy rebel gentleman who has trouble moving around the battlefield. You can see some possibilities with these new open transport.
So, to put it in layman's term, oh Moser, Oh, Moser saying shores. Buddy.
No, no. Well,
E-webs in the back of an occupier tank. The
everyone's
dream.
webs.
Yes.
I'm still on the Del Mico Astromech in an
Oh,
occupier
sure.
and repair it train.
That seems fun, but I want to slap that heavy machine gun in the back of my tank and just go ham on everything around me with that, because then you get to move with the occupier. You get to shoot with the occupier in the pintle. And then you get to activate your E-web, and you get to put further DACA onto a target, so it is just mountains of fire coming out of the front of this thing. And
Now,
the best part, too...
testing with it today while you were creating this beautiful graphics thing. There's a couple of things worth noting. Let's say that the E-web and the occupier start at the same starting line. You got an E-web and an occupier, and you got an E-web on its own. The E-web and the occupier gains about 3 inches of distance on that move. So let's say that the E-web takes the same action between the one on the ground and the one on the occupier. It's aim standbys. When the occupier moves, it doesn't lose a standby because it didn't move. Now, you can't trigger your standby off of the occupier's move because it's not an enemy. But you do gain 3 inches of distance on your E-web's very first move. It's awesome.
And the base is larger.
Yes.
So you're measuring from the base of the tank, not the base of the E-web. The E-web's just on there to look cool. You're going to be measuring from the base of the tank for range, and the fixed keyword disappears. You can fire in any direction out of the tank.
Yeah, so for
Which
like
is great.
yeah.
It cleans the occupier's weak point sides.
For the occupier, you now have, if you have an E-web in it, you technically have 3 different weapons that you have. You have the front guns, you have the pintle, which can shoot 360 already, and then you have the E-web that can shoot 360. So this thing can move on the pin down turn. This thing can move into the middle of an enemy army where they have 3 tokens up, be surrounded by them, and just DACA them all down and get rid of all those tokens, because it doesn't care.
You can't take the E-web's activation at the same time as the occupier.
No, they get one between. But you just get to DACA everything, and I love it.
Krugar seems to be on the same mental page as Ben over here. He's saying hot speeder.
Yeah. Han was like probably my favorite unit to play for after he came out for, I don't know, like quite a while, for many months. I'm often known more as an Imperial player, especially online, but I play more Rebels in person, and I love playing Han. He's so much fun. He's got such cool cards, and just the theme. It's Han Solo. So putting Han back on the table, because spoiler alert, his points came down, and the fact that he can cruise around in an X-34, which can compulsory at the beginning or end of its turn, and he's now got heavy cover plus his uncanny luck. And he can just unload from this speeder, and it's gonna be so cool. I'm for it.
Now, viewers who have been following along in the RRG are going to notice that we skipped a very particular part. And this comes down to the meme of, drive me closer so I can hit them with my sword.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about this earlier. If a vehicle transporting unit is in base contact with an enemy unit, the unit being transported is also considered to be in base contact. They can't perform ranged attacks against each other. They are in melee. Which means you could not put Han in a speeder, but instead put Luke in a speeder and drive by serving up decappuccinos. I just see him sticking it, like holding the lightsaber out of the side, just as he drives by.
The mental image I'm gonna have is the one that Ben beautifully painted earlier, which is just Luke Skywalker with a lightsaber leaning halfway out of his land speeder, which is technically just being driven up, and instead of making confetti out of mailboxes, it's gonna be stormtrooper helmets, and just bam, bam. Oh, I really want a custom mod. Like, oh man, if I could get a hold of like the Luke the special edition Luke because of the pose he's in. I want to have him sticking out there, and I want to have him holding a baseball bat. Or just have a custom Luke with a baseball bat modeled that you can stick into the co-pilot seat of a land speeder and just whack, whack.
Somebody needs to start working on that 3D print design right now that fits
my
into
God.
the land speeder perfectly and is leaning out.
Oh
Make it
man.
happen.
But yeah, Han in a speeder, Sabine in a speeder, because the gunslinger still triggers, so you zoom up and just drive by something.
Krugar's saying certain courage not unit.
Yes. For example, yeah, you put Vader in an occupier, you get a larger courage null. Yep, so Vader can get moved up too. So if you go ahead and you do, the funny thing too is you can actually measure saber throw from the tank if you have Vader in it as well.
MOE gets bigger.
Yep, MOE gets bigger. So
Yeah.
there's a bunch of, if you take the Vader in the if you put Vader in there, there's some interesting choices. Also, one note I don't know if we fully clarified. Units in open transports now have to be separately targeted if you want to deal wounds to them. So you can shoot the vehicle, the unit that's being transported will not suffer wounds, or you can shoot the units being transported and the vehicle will not suffer wounds. So that's an important distinction. You have to choose which of the two you're going to target when you attack it.
Yep.
All right.
The interesting thing though is that at the very end of this melee thing is that you can just drive off.
Yeah.
They're not considered engaged. They can't shoot each other, but you can shoot them.
Or whack them.
Yeah.
Yes. That's gonna be a very fun time. I'm very excited to play around with this change. I think this is a beautiful change. Transport is actually gonna be a thing now because it's a lot cleaner. There's so much fun you can have with it. I can't wait to see Han on the table again in the land speeder gunslinging like that. That's gonna be so much awesome.
I want to see somebody run 2 speeders with Han and Luke. I'm not saying
actually flyboys now. Actually flyboys.
You want to go that route. I approve.
All right.
It's like a fun list.
So we've talked a lot about that. I'm going to move us forward here because there's a lot to talk about at the end, and we're coming up on that hour and a half mark, so we got to keep it moving. There's a little note here under upgrade cards that says, you must have a specific upgrade slot in order to take this card. That's a specific reference to offensive/defensive stance, which is a training upgrade that requires the unit that it is put on to have a force slot. So that's something that they're doing now. I like that because it adds some nuance and some flexibility to upgrade cards that we haven't seen before. And moving forward here, Wookiee troopers are a thing. Right before we get to the juicy errata, that's going to be over there that I'm excited to talk about. Wookiee troopers. Wookiees are buffed. Wookiees are relevant.
Also, they're a subtype.
Yes, they're a subtype similar to the clone and droid trooper. Before it's the same kind of ruling there. The Wookiee trooper keyword only affects Wookiee troopers, and they follow the same rules as trooper units with no exception. I do believe, and I don't see it under Wookiee trooper here, so it's a subtype, but I do believe, does the Wookiee trooper keyword, is it the Wookiee trooper keyword that grants scale, or was it the unit errata to have scale?
I think it's errata to have scale.
I guess we'll find out because we're about to jump into the errata here. So I'm going to talk about this first errata that's sneaking in at the bottom here with covert observation.
See what you did there? It's sneaking in.
Yeah, and a little covert over there.
Yeah.
This is a completely different text for this card, which I love because this card was kind of absolutely irrelevant with how command cards work. And even with what we saw a little sneak peek of contingencies, this still wouldn't help with that, with how it was written. So instead now, covert observation says, while an opponent is issuing orders using a command card, each unit that is issued an order with that card gains 1 suppression. I think you're going to see these in solo Iden lists because it gives you an order on Iden, or a special forces unit, which is what that list cares about. If she's an operative specifically. You might see this in bounty hunter lists if it's like a solo bounty hunter list. It's just a nice little plus on a 1 pip that allows you, Krusk might
Rosk.
Krosk
Rosk.
Krosk might take it. Although I do personally prefer merciless munitions myself. I'd rather take Krennic's 1-pip and Bosk's 1-pip, but you can see this here as an option for that. It just gives you an option to be like, hey, you know what? Your things are going to get suppression, which can be relevant, maybe not for the first action. It could be relevant for the first action they take. It could be relevant for not, because if you start with suppression on those units, like let's say you're using this against Take That Clankers, I'll use it for example, or something like, No Time for Sorrows. Those units are going to start with suppression. So if let's say you have a mortar, Tauntauns get No Time for Sorrows, they get a suppression token automatically. What you can then do is let's say you have a HQ uplink shore trooper with a mortar. That mortar can then activate immediately, shoot the Tauntaun, give them 2 additional suppression with the suppressive keyword. That Tauntaun is now at that critical 3 suppression number, which means they might lose an action when they go into attack. So there's going to be a whole bunch of little interactions there. You got to make sure to not give your opponent a benefit with this by increasing their cover, which if you win priority, they'll be able to do. So you got to be a little careful, but there are some nuanced little bits that you might want to use this card for. I could also see this being used as like a mini MOE in a sense with Operative Vader if you're taking him with just like a generic commander, because Operative Vader does not necessarily want to take Implacable because of his lower wound count. So there's an argument for taking Covert Observation instead. I'm not sure if it's necessarily a great argument, but it's there to talk about.
Well, and there's an interesting thing here, and this kind of falls off with Sabotage Communications. This card is better the higher pip your opponent plays.
Yes.
So it's a card that does really benefit from you predicting what your opponent wants to do. And you can, what is it? Rex's card gives out, I think, 4 orders, his 3 pip?
Yes, so you could give 4 suppression. If you're up against like a Rex Phase 1 list, that's going to be brutal.
An entire legion!
An entire legion is insane. If you play that into an entire legion and they have Courage 1 units, it's like, "Aight, buddy, have all of your suppression."
Annihilation looms, but only for them.
Yep. All right, speaking of Sabotage Communications, I do want to hand this over to Ben to discuss this one, since you've been talking about the Rebel topics tonight.
Sounds good. While an opponent is issuing orders using this command, using a command card, they can issue only 1 order, just 1, with that card. So you're not reducing it by 1. They only get 1. So similar to Covert Observation, the best play is to play this when your opponent was going to be issuing a lot of orders, so you can totally negate an entire legion.
So the text on this card, if you don't mind me jumping in really quick, what the text on this card actually says is "Screw you, Tactical Strike." That's what this card actually says.
Now, if you're running Han Chewie, and you bring Change of Plans and you bring Sabotage Communications, you can make sure that they're not playing Tactical Strike in turn 1 or 2, and totally nerf these.
They'll play it, they just won't get a great benefit.
Yeah, they get 1. They get 1.
Change of Plans, they won't play it.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah.
Change of Plans. I love that opener. If they set up for a turn 1 Tactical Strike, you go Change of Plans. If they don't play Tactical Strike, you say, okay. And then you just let it go out. And then the next turn, if they want a Tactical Strike, you go Sabotage Communications. And then if they don't play Tactical Strike there, you're like, okay. Because then they still only get to give out 1 order. And then,
you should have chewed through them enough that now it's going to be not the same thing.
Yeah, and by turn 3, it's just not the same. So,
and these cards have been such a non-starter. I feel like a lot of people are going to miss this and are going to learn the hard way that these cards are actually pretty okay now.
Oh,
awesome.
Sabotage Communications against an entire legion.
Yeah.
I love it.
You thought you were getting orders? Yeah, no, you're not, buddy. Sorry. I love how tricksy Rebels are getting. Especially with Han coming back to the table. I can't wait to see just people get screwed with, because Change of Plans is so great for playing those mental mind games. Okay, so John, on this page, which one do you want to talk about without excluding this one, because we're saving this one for last? We're saving the T-47 for last. Do you want to talk Wookiees? Do you want to talk Mark II Medium Blaster? Or you want to talk Son of Skywalker?
I'll talk about the Medium Blaster because I do like what happened there. It's just a simple increase of the wound threshold. What that effectively does is it makes its durability the same as a mortar. The mortar still has the advantage of range, but at the very least, both are going to take 6 saves to knock out. It's a simple change. It makes sense. It feels good for Rebels because the Mark II just felt like an activation that was going to get deleted in one shot, and that's what really was one of the big things that was holding vets back, was that you were just like, oh, I'm going to take this activation that my opponent will then immediately get off the field. Now, there's a little bit more investment, to remove it, which is nice.
And I want to jump in on that. I did have time to update my ridiculous spreadsheet with some of these values, and I made sure to do the core and so a little bit of spoilers for what's later. I have the most efficient ranged firepower rating for a core unit. Number 1 is now Rebel Veterans with their heavy. Number 2 is the Mark II Medium Blaster Trooper.
Yep.
The most efficient core for offense.
Which fits their veteran status as veteran troops of the Rebel Alliance. So
I love it.
Hoth Rebel's going to be out a lot more, especially once we talk about what happened to their points and to their heavy. Son of Skywalker, I'm going to cover these other two before I go ahead and give the T-47 Airspeeder over to Ben. Son of Skywalker now says attack action, not melee attack, so you can use his pistol or saber throw. With Son of Skywalker with the second attack there, in case you have Operative Luke and you annihilate an entire group of Stormtroopers with the first attack, you can then saber throw into something else. Or if you have Commander Luke, you can shoot something with your DL-44. So that's just a little bit of a nice thing there. Wookiee Warriors, as we mentioned before, yeah, so it was an errata. So they have Scale and Duelist, which Duelist is the keyword that was seen, I believe, on the Beskar the Beskar from the Mandalorians.
Beskar Duelist?
Beskar Duelist, yes, thank you. Which allows you to, if you spend an aim token in melee, you gain Pierce 1, so Wookiees, those claws and those rook blades coming in nasty there. And if you spend a dodge token, you gain Immune Pierce, which makes them a fantastic tar pit versus like a Jedi or something that really wants to cut through them. Oh my God, are they a good tar pit with their wounds?
They're now the linebackers they should be. Like, yes. IRG have always felt good as linebackers. Wookiees felt kind of meh. Now they feel good as linebackers. And interestingly enough, neither of them are advantaged towards the other. Wookiees versus IRG, probably just a wash.
Yeah.
Because the duelist isn't going to help the Wookiees with the Electro Staff. And the IRG don't have Pierce to throw back. It's an interesting pair-off. At least now the Wookiees can see some play.
Yes, I think they're very much deserving of getting scale, especially since that was introduced to the game. So that way they're a lot more mobile. They can do some scary things now by running up to a cliff, scaling up it, and then opening up with their pistols and their bowcaster. So there's a lot of good things there. Chewbacca as a quick... Whoop. Jumped ahead slightly. Chewbacca, as a slight note, what happened with him is he also gained scale. As a Wookiee there, he got scale, and then he also got lethal 1 on his overwhelm attack. So that's why they gave him overwhelm instead of his current thing. So it's 4 red dice still, but he can spend an aim to give himself Pierce in melee, which gives him a little
use for an aim.
Yeah, so he has a use for an aim instead of just using them with his bowcaster. In melee, he can just tear into people with Pierce, and just tear through a unit like he would and rip their arms off. Now, the real spicy one, Ben. Take it away.
So the airspeeder is down in points, which it doesn't say here, but more importantly, what it does say here, it's surged to crit. It's surged to crit now.
It's a scary tank hunter now.
Yeah, it's real scary.
Impact 3 surge to crit. Let me just force 5 saves on your AAT.
it's still got impact 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a heavy hunter.
Yeah, it has gone in my mind from the only D tier heavy to now being B tier at least. And I think it could be better. I'm not sure. But at the very least, just that simple change, and I mean, there's a points reduction too, but makes it at least B tier. I honestly don't think there's a C tier heavy anymore. I think all heavies are at least B tier now.
Yeah, air speeders run in conjunction with each other, especially with some of their other points decreases to their upgrades and stuff. Oh man, you're going to be able to do some dirty, dirty things. With the compulsory move change as well, getting their timing better and being able to do so they don't have to constantly move, so they can last first into a side of a heavy if they get the weak point. Oh, they're going to be able to do some crazy amounts of damage to armor, and they truly now are like the glass cannon of the heavies that they were kind of intended to be. I'm very excited to see them on the table. And the fact that they do, again, spoiler a little ahead, they only cost 130 points now, right? Pretty sure it's 130 points for this
I don't
platform.
remember. Is it really that low?
I think it's that low. We'll take a look at it in a moment. But, oh man.
Yeah, it's 130.
Okay, so looking at the upgrade cards quickly, we're just gonna go through a bunch of them are like Biston, DTF-16, and on the next page, POW. They all got a wound threshold of 2, being the unique characters that they are, so they're following up on that precedent. Looks like we did lose John. He'll probably be back in as soon as he can. So, looking here, we do have an Errata to aggressive tactics, which now says, after each unit chooses 4 friendly units with a face-up order tokens, each unit gains 1 surge token. So functionally reads the same, but they changed it to instead. I think it's you choose 4 with face-up, and then they get it. There was some difference there that they just wanted to clarify. Obviously, we mentioned before the CMO-93. The CMO-93 is now range 1 to 4. That unit they're basically the rebel equivalent of shore troopers.
Mm-hmm.
They're very scary. They're going to be able to throw a lot of damage and crits your way.
Glassy, though.
Glassy, though, indeed, which is why they have
Rebels.
Defend. As we move forward as well, Jedi Mind Trick is now, I mean, it kind of got nerfed to hell. I think this is mostly because of Anakin entering the game, where Jedi Mind Trick, now you have to choose a non-heavy, non-operative trooper. Non-commander, non-operative trooper at range 1, and it gains 2 suppression tokens. So this is a lot more flavorful. Darth Vader or Anakin Skywalker shouldn't be getting Jedi Mind Tricked. And now it is range 1, so it's in line with Choke for that regard. So it's kind of just a mirror there, but it did get significantly nerfed. So you're probably going to see some other light side upgrades or neutral upgrades showing up when it comes to that slot. So I don't know if you're going to see a whole lot of Jedi Mind Trick anymore, maybe on specific characters like, for example, Operative Luke, that want to use it to get a command card effect.
Yeah, it was, I think largely too, was to prevent you from getting usurped your master as well. A character just wrecking a unit, It wouldn't feel good if, like, you got Op Vader. Your Op Vader just
Well, I believe Usurp Your Master
and
well was already non-operative, non-commander. But what it does is it reduces the range that you can get the Usurp Your Master well thing off, or like prep for it at the very least. There's a couple interactions there. But it's not something that you want to take all the time now. Something like, that costs the same now. Like Force Reflexes might actually be up your alley, which we're going to go ahead and talk. There's a lot of points changes. This is listing old ones and new ones. It does not clarify which are which, but there's a whole bunch of things to talk about here. We're going to go through kind of quickly. Aggressive Tactics is 15. We'll cover the notable ones. Look through the rest yourself. Aggressive Tactics is 15 points now, so that's a 50% increase. So it now costs 15 because it is a very powerful card that is going to be able to do a lot for you. Emergencies.
It lists the name of AgTac.
AgTac, yeah.
AgTac.
Improvised Orders is down to 5 points, so something that was fun to take on Han might be fun to take again. The force upgrades have all basically been reduced to 5 points, except with the exceptions of like a force barrier, force barrier, and force push still being 10. The remainder are mostly 5 or less. Emergency stims is back to 10, so it was at 8, it went to 12, and now it's at 10. So you'll probably see this pop up a little bit more. The generators are down to 3. Grappling hooks is down to 1 because people just want scale instead.
Did scopes go up by 1?
No,
Scopes?
scopes is still at 4.
Okay.
Generators are down to 3, and grenades have also been reduced. Smoke grenades at 2 is now actually a semi-attractive option, maybe, because they're very cheap. As opposed, they still cost an action to use, but at least they're cheap. Ben, you look like you had something you wanted to say.
Two things about the neutral upgrade. So one of them is that though the barrage generator is legit. It is legit. I will run the barrage generator if I can afford it on my e-whips. I think it really adds some serious value town, especially now that it only costs 3. Really good upgrade now. And I was going to say with the grenades, I haven't run the math yet to see how big of a difference it makes that they drop down to 3 points. It seems like I'm probably still not going to run grenades.
Yeah.
But I think if I played in skirmish, which is everything's a lot closer together, I think that's where maybe I would see outfitting units with grenades as a more likely choice. But I don't know. Maybe you put them. Maybe everything in your Gav tank now has grenades, and they throw their grenades as the Gav drives by. It's a whole new world. Don't you dare close your eyes.
No. That frags didn't get changed at all because
frags are frags
that get taken.
Yeah, frags are still good. Take frags on snows. Impacts are like if you're specifically dealing with a lot of armor in your meta, which might be happening. Impacts are a little cheaper on snows. If you want to take that, impact snows were always good too. So they're still solid if you want a little anti-armor line back going on there. And now they're 2 points cheaper. Okay. Interesting stuff now as we zoom in here. I'm gonna talk Empire here. I'll talk the characters.
Let Ben talk about the first point.
So Ben, first off, the one that's mostly relevant to you here.
Speeder bikes are the same as the previous Errata.
There you go. So, the ATST is 10 points cheaper, John, is that correct?
Yeah, from its last iteration, it's another 10 points. So now you can literally take, if you had it before, toss a mortar on it, because now that's the points it is.
Yeah, so it's a little cheaper. It's brought in a little more in line with the Saber Tank and the AAT, I believe, which both start at 160, which was the intent there. Darth Vader, both versions for me. Man, has he been discounted from where he was. From where he started at the beginning of the game, he is now 25 points cheaper, which means he is able to... I still personally would really like to see an Errata on him someday, because I think he really has just kind of been left back behind mechanically in some ways. But him being cheaper, I will not complain about. This makes running him with Stormtroopers and Dewbacks a lot easier, because both of those units have also received upgrade deductions that we'll talk about in a bit. And the Dewbacks themselves have also been decreased a little bit down to 75, so there's a lot of interesting things going on there. Also of note, Shore Trooper mortars have been increased slightly due to their proliferance. I believe they were increased by what? 2 points? 3 points?
2.
2 points. So from 36 to 38.
I believe it's 2 and 3 for a total of 5.
3. I believe the 3-point increase is from the T-21B, which is the heavy for the Shore Troopers. So they all got a little bit of a buff, or not buff, they got a little bit of a nerf with them jumping up. Snow Troopers are now the same price as Stormtroopers, which I'm happy about. Just a little cheaper there. Snow's coming back in. I believe the Occupier also got a points decrease. Palpatine got a points decrease. All the Jedi got. Basically, what had happened is basically every single Saber user in the game got decreased. I'm coming to Boba. Calm down, Krugar. All the Saber users got about a 5-point decrease.
He saw my face because I thought you skipped him too, and I was like,
yeah, no. So all the Saber users got decreased by about 5. Vader got decreased by 15, I think is the correct number from what previously it was, which is just awesome. And yes, Boba Fett, who has not been present on tables due to being slightly overcosted, got decreased
Slightly.
also by 15 points.
Slightly. He was a 15-point drop. That is not insignificant. That is, I think that really shows what he needed to be competitive in this day and age.
Yeah, Boba is still a pretty solid kit, especially with Seize the Initiative coming back, or coming out with Anakin and Maul, to get some interesting, as a training slot alternative there for him to get an order on certain other turns that aren't his. While he's exposed on his own. Boba, I think you're going to see some Boba come back. Boba come back. Um, I'm very excited. I
Boba.
think
A cheaper Boba in like Krennic with Seize the Initiative seems like it could be kind of fun.
yes.
Like using that, like, Seize the Initiative discard on Krennic's Cunning to like snipe out a character. You could almost do the good old compulsory move thing. You could go in, shoot, and then shoot and run back.
Yeah, the last
Or
first
fly
Boba.
Yeah,
So
it's more viable now.
some interesting things there. Of course, the dewbacks weapons saw major decreases. The T21 being only 5 points. Guys, take a T21. If you take a dewback, like at a bare minimum, take a T21. Short
With it,
troopers.
with the decreases, it's basically free now from what.
Yes, with the decreases, the T21 on the dewback is basically free. Take it. The option is fantastic to have. Stormtrooper weapons across the board, including the T7 Ion for the snowtroopers as well, also decreases between 2 and 6 points. So those are all cheaper, which makes spamming them a little bit easier on your point total. Shore troopers, of course, a little more expensive. General Weiss is at 1 point. Unfortunately, I don't think we're still going to see our boy taken out of maybe double ATST builds, maybe.
No.
But still probably not, just because the efficiency of the Hammer's pilot
If
is...
he had Field Commander...
Yes, if he had Field Commander, which I want to happen someday.
Yeah, I know. I did that just to poke you. It's just... The problem is, if he had the thing that the TIE X1 and X-Wing had, where it decreased the cost of, like, the ATST's guns, so you actually felt good taking all 4 guns... Like, every gun gets a 5-point decrease, and you get Arsenal 4. He would be viable at that point, but right now...
I don't know about every gun getting a 5-point decrease. But this is a good idea. This is a good idea. I like this idea.
Yes, so Weiss needs a little bit more love. Wedge is actually in a pretty solid spot with the T-47 now getting buffed, with his platform getting buffed, but Weiss himself just needs a little more love. And then across the board... the personnel, and this is for every faction, I believe, pretty much. The personnel upgrades for core troops have all basically seen some level of points decrease. So all the personnels, they're no longer costed at the equivalent wound, they are now undercosted. So now when you take the 5th Stormtrooper in a squad that's not a heavy weapon, you're technically getting more bang for your buck than you did when you paid for the main unit. And that goes for all personnel upgrades. Officers coming down 3 points for Empire. I think they're coming down a similar amount for Rebels. Just more efficient when it comes to putting those upgrades in to try to encourage them to be taken a little bit more. I think there was an interesting comparison that our friend Garn on the team, who was very excited about the Boba Fett decreases, he had another thing that was kind of his shtick back when he played a little more often. He's going to be coming back more after these changes here, is a DLT Stormtrooper unit with an officer is now cheaper than a Shore Trooper with a T-21B. That is definitely where we should be when it comes to points. And I know, Ben, you ran some numbers on these, right?
Yeah, so the third most points efficient unit in core right now in the whole game for offense is a DLT Stormtrooper, which is great. And right behind that slot right now, I've got slots number, let me pull it up here real quick. Slots number 4. Slot 4 is a B1 unit with the E5S. Slot 5, B1's the E5R, actually. And then the slot after that would be the Stormtroopers with the RT97. So my main point being here that the DLT and the RT97 are, for all intents and purposes, I think they're really mostly equal. And it really comes down to like variety and personal preference. Like I love that it feels like I really have a legitimate choice again when I play Empire. I can run Shore Troopers and feel good about Shore Trooper Mortar, and I can run Stormtroopers with DLTs and mix in some RT-97s, and I can throw in Snow Troopers. Like, it really actually feels like I can almost play what I want or really fine tune to my command cards and things like that with my core, which is, I mean, I think they nailed it more than with I think this is probably the best thing that they did in the whole update. Imperial core feels very well balanced finally.
Yep, and it'll
Yeah.
just change on what kind of playstyle you're looking for and that kind of stuff too. For example, the RT-97C versus the DLT. A lot of people's initial thought is, but the RT-97C has 2 more dice. Well, the DLT-19 actually performs better if you find light cover or out of cover shots compared to the RT-97C. So also, that point of impact with armor getting a whole lot of buffs in this version of the RRG, if you're dealing with more armor in your meta, you may want to bring DLT Stormtroopers over RT-97Cs because you're going to be able to force more saves more reliably than you would on an RT-97C.
And I think this is one thing I've said for a while now is like I love Shore Troopers. Not necessarily because of their raw offense, but because of their ability to get core out of the pool. It's nice to me that they're not the best offense anymore. That if I'm paying for order control, I'm not also getting the best gun in the game.
Most efficient. Just to clarify.
Most efficient gun in the game. Instead that I'm paying my points for something I want, order control, whereas somebody else might be paying for a more efficient gun line when they're not worried about the order control as much, or they figured out some other way. If they're playing like Krennic, a DT, and then like 6 RT-97s. I don't know what they're gonna play.
Well, because what's interesting is one part of like why Vader was suffering a lot too right now is Vader doesn't have necessarily the spare orders to give out to Shore Troopers to get their full efficiency out of them, and that can start really enable what you wanted to do with Shore Troopers. So this is almost a stealth buff to Vader as well, where if it's more of the Stormtroopers and the Snow Troopers are cheaper and they're more efficient, which then allows you to run more of them and spam more of them in a list, because you can run core that don't want face-up orders in an Empire list now, and that's the main change.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll move on now from the Empire.
Is this technically a buff to coordinated fire?
I think it's the coordinated fire stays neutral. Coordinated fire is still technically best on Shore Troopers because they want the face-ups anyway.
Fair.
So I don't think it really affects it that much in that way. Holy points decreases in the Rebels, though.
No. Not just decreases, a very crucial increase.
Yes, that's true. There's a good increase in here, too.
I'm just going to highlight that, and then we're going to continue on with what's going on. So, Han Solo is 100 points now, which is fantastic. Chewbacca did not see any decreases, I believe, but now paying for Han Solo and Chewbacca together does not cost more than Emperor Palpatine. That's very important because you really want to take them together because of how well they synergize with each other, and now it doesn't cost more than Emperor Palpatine, which I think is a very good spot to be. You have Jyn getting a further reduction down to 100 just to make her a little more appealing. I know there's some good Rogue One style lists that like to bring her, and she does some interesting things. Luke getting a decrease, of course, that 5-point decrease across the board. Pathfinder's got a decrease as well to make them a little more efficient for their glass cannony. Oh, the most important increase.
No, you highlighted cons like that was what I was talking about. No. No.
R2-D2
got a 15-point cut. R2 got a 10-point add-on.
Yeah, this was absolutely and entirely necessary.
Was stronger than they thought it was gonna. It felt like they thought Bounty was going to be better than Secret Mission, and then it turned out Secret Mission was better than Bounty. And now we're seeing that reflected in these point changes.
Yeah. So R2 there was a discussion, I believe, in a specific article posted by a Kyle Dornbus over on the Fifth Trooper earlier. A little note, there was a specific discussion about R2D2. You're probably not going to see naked R2D2 as much anymore as you used to see, because he now no longer costs more than a squad of Rebel Corps troopers.
Yeah.
Naked. That's important. R2D2, you're going to see him a lot more often with C3PO in order to get the efficiency, because C3PO did not see a points increase, I believe. So he did not at all. So that C3PO is still very efficient. So now it's more efficient to actually take, I believe it's more efficient to take C3PO and get the extra wounds and the extra abilities that come with him, and the ability to put, calculate odds tokens on something, which a lot of people are playing around with.
Or distract. Have you ever seen anyone use that keyword ever?
Yeah, very efficiently in YBTL this season, actually.
Really?
People have used Distract to win games in YBTL this season. So you're going to see a lot more Distract coming out, again, leaning into that tricksy side of things. Ben, you have any comments on this?
I was going to say that yeah, your intuitive math is correct, that adding 3PO to R2 does make it a more efficient defensive pool. And then the other thing that I was going to say was with special forces, and this is, in part to, we see the Pathfinders came down, but there's also, you might have probably looked ahead, or maybe they can't really see everything. There's some other things that are cheaper too. I just want to say that for the non-strike team special forces, the most efficient, second most efficient offensive unit is Pathfinders with their config and Biston. It's cool.
Yep. So that's definitely Biston and Pow. I think both saw, at least they saw their wound go up, so that again makes them a little more defensible. So you might see a little more Pathfinders showing up. Tawns also saw an increase to make them a little less spammable. It's a relatively negligible increase, but it does get rid of some extra upgrades that may have been floating around, or reduce the bid of those kinds of lists, especially combined with the increase on R2D2. So you're not going to be able to see, that's across the board. I think what Ton saw, a 6-point increase, was it? 5-point increase?
5-point increase. So if you're thinking triple tons plus R2, you're looking at a 25-point increase to that list.
Yeah, so that's a heavy weapon. That's a significant increase to that those style of lists. So they're going to have to find time to move points, or maybe take something that isn't a little trash can that can score secret mission.
I was going to say they can't. There's not a heavy weapon in that list usually. They can't. They just can't take R2 if they're going to run triple tons.
Yeah,
as they used to.
So you can't even cut the jammers anymore. That's not enough.
Yep. All right, and Wookiees, of course, being reduced to a wonderful, wonderful number. A nice number there. A little joke for everybody. That's definitely going to be jokes made about that on the Wookiees. And the X-34 land speeder down to 60 points.
Again, you're gonna see doubles. 2 of them with the boys. It's gonna be a thing, and I'm gonna love every second of it.
Oh, I love it. I love it
I'm
so
not
much.
gonna, but I want to see it.
All right, upgrades. The biggest ones that I do want to highlight when it comes to upgrades for the Rebels, when it comes to points decreases, are actually the Personal Combat Shield and Darksaber for Sabine Wren. Both of those saw significant decreases in points. I believe Darksaber came down, I want to say 10, and the Personal Combat Shield came down 5. So you're going to see her specific unique upgrades taken a lot more often on Sabine, I feel, because their utility is very strong. Beyond that, go ahead.
I was going to say, I agree that the combat shield is going to, I feel like combat shield you take now, almost certainly. It's very efficient. I don't like Sabine in melee.
Well, I think the reason why you take Darksaber for 15 points is the fact that she can move while suppressed.
That's fair.
That's why you take it. You don't take it for melee. You take it because she gets, what does she get? Immune pierce in melee versus being attacked in melee. And she also gains, I forget what the keyword is, but it's the rebel. What was it?
Indomitable.
No, it's not indomitable.
Isn't that?
No, it's No, Indomitable's the Wookiee reroll red dice.
Oh,
There's a keyword, I'm blanking on it right now off the top of my
Dauntless.
head.
There it is.
Dauntless, thank you. Where it allows her to take, yeah, it helps, you don't go in with her on Darksaber, you take it for the ability to move, and you take it for immune pierce when you get attacked. Alright, decreases on
It's
the
50-50. Increases and decreases.
increases and decreases. The decreases specifically on the T-47 are there. Guys, take the harpoon.
Oh, I thought
Just-
you were talking about clones.
Free.
It's free. It's free. Just take it. Just if you could, the ground buzzer's great at 10. Ground buzzer is legit at 10. If you're not taking a ground buzzer, take the harpoon. Especially with surge to crit now, you have a 25% chance to turn a vehicle. Like, do it. Just do it. It'd be hilarious to turn the ATST and make it lose an action. Or take the occupier and expose its weak point. Like, or take the AAT that wants to barrage you. Well, technically it can still barrage you because it can shoot out of the side, but take the saber and tilt it, or just do some shenanigans. Have some fun with that. Increases on what was were there any upgrades increased for rebels?
I think maybe the CMO 93 because of the range buff.
I don't
maybe?
believe it actually. I don't believe
No.
it saw an increase. No. So I don't think a single rebel upgrade saw an increase this time around.
Yeah,
Which
I believe
again,
that's accurate.
buffs, not nerfs, for the
Yeah.
most part, which is really, really important. And then wedge costing 1 point. If you don't take wedge in an airspeeder, I don't know what you're doing right now. Because
I mean, you can still take the cover pilot. It's not a bad choice.
cover pilot's great. But yeah, wedge is in an HQ uplink build as like a secondary speeder. Pretty solid. All right.
This is where I meant about 50-50. Ups
Yes.
and downs.
Here's the increases. ARC Troopers now cost 78 points. ARC Trooper Strike Teams now cost 27 points. That should make them a little bit harder to squeeze a bid or squeeze things. That combined with the fact that Phase 2 Clone Troopers are also increased means that you're looking at a collective, if you're looking at a typical Rex Star list, where you had like 4 Phase 2s, so that's 8, plus the ARC Trooper Strike Team increase, which I don't remember off the top of my head. Essentially, you're looking at about probably 20 points across the list of an increase, just from the unit cards alone, which is a significant. That's your bid gone, and most people weren't even, like, I wasn't in my list that I'm running. I didn't even have a bid that was high enough to swallow that. So you're probably going to be looking at dropping an activation or getting rid of some heavy weapons. Or looking at some other options like our Phase 1 Clone Trooper brethren, who have had some decreases on their heavy weapons that we'll talk about. Again, R2 is also increased, and Obi-Wan got a little 5-point knockoff to make him, just because, Obi-Wan exists in a faction that has Rex available to it with Clone Troopers. So, just wanted to make him a little bit nicer there. Bark Speeders.
ARC speeders.
Also got a decrease. Yes, they're going to be very fun.
Triple bark's real.
Yep.
I've done it. I've done the math. It's real. Bark speeders are basically right in line with their efficiency on offense as speeder bikes, and then they're way more efficient for defense. So run triple barks, people. It's I don't own clones, but I might borrow some from a buddy. Because triple bark I think is going to be cool, and specifically it's the RPS 6 or the twin laser are both legit according to my numbers. Those are both good choices for what you can do. Ion is a little bit below that, but if you're expecting to see droids or to see vehicles, I mean, taking away actions from vehicles is always good. So
I just want to say, just think about this: A-list Sakura and a saber. Another saber with whatever upgrades you want to give it. Triple bark. And maybe some phase ones, but definitely R2 because you want repair. Not because you want secret mission, because you want repair.
Man, that's a tight list, but it might work.
I just think of every faction. I go, how can I make this armor? Gar armor actually seems fun. No, you're not super viable, but at least fun to try.
Personally, what I see there would be more Ayla Sakura and a Saber Tank and 2 ATRTs, personally. But
That's you could.
there's some definitely. I'm glad that mechanized options are now worth serious consideration in
Outside
Republic
of
lists.
yeah.
Yes. All right. Looking down as well, the Phase 2 Mortar Trooper got a decrease, so you might see those popping up a little bit. The keywords on it are a little hard to work with, but it has some applicable parts. It has some good keywords on there with suppressive and critical, and it's now only 20 points, so that can help compensate for the increase to Phase 2's overall. Phase 1 heavies all basically saw a little bit of a decrease. To push the disparity. I believe the disparity between a Phase 2 Z6 and a Phase 1 Z6 is like 14 points now, or something like that. So you may want to consider taking some Phase 1 Z6s to shave some points off on your list if you're looking to do that. Also, again, the personnel slots also went down for the Phase 1s. So again, looking at that, Phase 1s look a lot more attractive than they have been as of late, especially with standby sharing going away and that training slot on the Phase 2s not being quite as mandatory to make the most use out of the Clone Trooper keyword. And moving down to the Separatists, they had a significantly shorter list of errata because they are very well balanced currently overall. Grievous got a decrease. I don't know why, but he did.
Have lightsabers, therefore they get decreased.
Apparently, Grievous at 170 is real good, guys. Same with Dooku at 200. They're both real good. So, you're still going to see that. Droideca's at 80.
Is awesome.
Droideca's at 80.
Yes! Jedi Maulers incoming.
Yes. If you are not trying to play the coordinate mini game with Staps, Staps are still fantastic. And with the compulsory stuff, that's definitely something to play around with. But if you're not wanting to play that game, and let's say you're taking a certain operative with a tank maybe, and you don't have a lot of orders to give out, fill out your list. You might want to look at some Droidecas because they are tough nuts to crack, and they are something that cannot be ignored by your opponent because they will do insane things in the late game if they are left alone. Additionally, B2s got cheaper, and with that T-Series droid coming, I'm scared.
Well, I'll wait till we get to the heavy, but I want to talk about how cheap that unit can be and how dirty it can be.
So, as a note, this second B2 ACM is the B2 Ha, or the B2HA. That is the cycling rocket trooper. So their heavies saw some decreases, and John, you wanted to talk about that?
So, as it stands right now, you can take a B2 squad, a B2 Ha, and a T-Series, and it's 93 points. You lose AI attack, you get a range 3 red, 1 white blast weapon. And then if you next turn walk into range 2, you can basically throw ATST dice every turn with a 93-point unit. I just recover shooting every turn with blast. Just throw it out there. It's a thing.
And reliable. Don't forget the fact that they get reliable to help their saves as well.
I'm gonna say this. If you wanted to put 6 super battle droids with that config and 3 droid snipers, you would have 92 points left over. If a generic's cheaper than 92 points, you can make a 10 activation list. Now, I will give credit where credit's due. I thought that this build was a one-off. I thought you'd get 1 B2 at the end of a B1 chain. And then Kyle Dornbos was like, hey, what if I do 6? And I started thinking, and I was like, what if you do 6? With these points cuts, it wasn't. I don't think it was really possible before the points cuts, but right now, oh dear, because those units aren't going to lose firepower until you take out the heavies, and you have to chew through 8 armor 1 health points before you can do that on every single one of those units. It's crazy. It's going to be an interesting list.
You're going to see B2s a lot more often on the battlefield. That's for sure.
And you're going to see with the Ha. A lot of people were running them with the ACM.
I still like the ACM a lot.
Personally. I do too. Yeah, it's not bad, and I think that if there are certain builds where you're gonna want it, but that 3 red 1 white is gonna be real appealing for a lot of people.
I think overall, there's nothing that I'm disappointed by in this update, which is incredible.
I have one gripe. I should say gripe. I'm surprised by one thing. No increase on offensive push. It's such a ubiquitous upgrade. It's like at almost every training slot. I could have even, and to a certain extent, I could even see situational awareness, even though it's really, really new. So maybe that's why.
It's too new,
Those two are like in every one of those two is almost every training slot. You're either taking offensive push or taking situational awareness. Unless like again, there's like niche tenacity or whatever else. But like as a universal pick, if I was to say 8 out of 10, no, I was at 7 out of 10, probably offensive push, and then you've got 2 out of 10 are situational awareness, and the rest are going to be tenacity, maybe. Not seeing an increase there surprised me.
I'm guessing that they felt that it's addressed somewhat by not generating tokens in turn 0 anymore, so you can't do like the Cassian shenanigans with it as much. So but that's only really only Cassian was doing that. That's not and clones. So I agree with you that it is very, very common. So I could see it getting a slight bump at some point just for the sake of variety. But I'm guessing that they felt like they hit it a little bit, and they're going to see where it lands.
Yeah,
I can see it at 6.
I wouldn't be surprised to see it at 6 points eventually. But as of right now, we'll enjoy it while it's at 4. With what it does. I also, again, my one thing I wasn't that actually was the one thing I was disappointed. I would have liked to see an Errata of some kind, Darth Vader, Commander specifically. I do think he's been aged out by a lot of things. He could use a little more love than just some points decreases, because I also don't want to get to the point where we see an 150 point Darth Vader, because he's the Dark Lord of the Sith. He should be expensive, and I want him to be worth those points at that point cost. That's the only thing that was still on my wish list that I eventually would like to see. Ben, you have anything else? Anything at all come to the memory?
Yeah. Can I preview a thing?
Oh, yes. I think you should preview a thing.
Do you have the ability to show them a preview?
Have the ability. I mean, I can bring it up. Yes, I'll bring it up.
Yeah, if you want to just show it, just click on one thing. Don't click on a bunch of stuff. Just click on one thing. So we've been in the background. We've been working on a project, and we're gonna see if we can finish the updates to it tonight, I think, so that hopefully it can go live tomorrow. If not, expect it on Monday. But there's a new tool by Team Relentless called the Legion Unit Synergy Tool. And that will release either tomorrow or the next day, the Legion Unit Synergy Tool. It's being programmed by Nima, who's our genius programmer. And what this tool is going to be used for is you can click on a unit, and then it's going to color code all of the other units in that faction to guide you towards what you might be most interested in grabbing, either for purchasing more, if you're trying to figure out what to buy, if you're newer into the game, or for army building. So it's going to be very useful for purchasing or for army building. And I see that we have a back soon up right now. Is that accurate? Are you pulling? Awesome. Okay, that totally makes sense. Perfect. So this is the unit synergy tool, and I'm super excited about it. It's something that I started realizing doesn't exist, and I wish it did when I started writing a buying guide. So there's a 2-part announcement. Announcement number 1: a new tool will be launching either tomorrow or Monday that is going to help you figure out how to more efficiently be guided towards what units to put in your army. and we got as many eyes on it as we could. We're trying to make it pretty balanced. It's pretty rare that we say you have to take these or never take this, but we're pointing out when there are good opportunities for things. So and there'll be more videos that go over it, one faction at a time and that sort of thing. And so the other announcement is on Monday, I'm going to launch a buying guide. So there's going to be a video buying guide right before the holidays for anybody. I know if you're watching this right now, you don't really need a buying guide, but people who you want to get into this game, and it can be complex to figure out what to get to start with. And so there's going to be a 2020 quarter 4 buying guide that tries to take a lot of the unit synergies into account as we recommend how to jump into Legion or how to expand your collection out in Legion. So that's what I have to say about that. I'm super pumped about it. I'm excited about it. We can't show you the URL because it's secret. So yeah, while he's getting that all situated, I will say again a huge shout out to Nima, who has been the person who I kind of pitched this idea like, hey, what if we had something? And I literally drew it on a sheet of paper and then put it into like a Google Slides presentation and was like, could we make something that looks like this? And Nima was like, I can do that. It was straight out of like Last Jedi, like Dio being like, shoot, I'm gonna forget the quote now. I know he says it. What's he say in the jail when he's okay? Let's see it.
So, did a quick refresh.
That's what he says. He goes, "I can do it." That's what he says.
So here is a quick preview of the Legion Synergy tool. You see another lovely Rebel Alliance. There's a whole bunch of listed things. And let's say I want to click on my friend Han Solo here.
These are non-final. They've been updated recently, but they're not final yet.
They're non-final, but there are certain units highlighted in different colors that can tell you, hey, maybe take a look at this one over this one when it comes to that. So there's still some final work that's going to be put on this. Again, this should be coming up soon, TM, as we get some final work done. But yeah, some fun stuff here. Or if you click on a unit, it changes around who pairs well with who. Maybe a little hint here that you should probably take this person when you look at someone else. So some really interesting stuff going on. All right, that's enough of a preview for now. We're going to jump back.
Thank you for pulling that up.
Of course. Jump back, bring our lovely faces back onto the screen here in just a moment, and we will go ahead and wish you all a good rest of your night here very shortly. First off, is there any additional questions that anyone has in regards to the end of the night here? Any questions about the RRG? Any questions about us, about Team Relentless? The Synergy tool questions will have to wait, but if there is anyone to ask it now or forever hold your peace.
Or forever hold your peace until the next time we do this.
Yes, of course. Give a minute.
Not seeing anything out of YouTube.
Oh, give a minute for the delay to catch up.
Oh, that's fair. It's a good point.
All right. Actually, while we're waiting for that, John, what was your favorite thing out of this RRG update?
Heavies.
Heavies.
I mean, I was joking. I mean, no, seriously, like the amount of I am really in the camp of buffs, not nerfs. To see so many things get points decreases versus units get points increases was awesome to me. Also seeing again, like it's such a minor thing, but the Mark II getting a 1 point health boost. I've been saying that for a long time, that I think that's what it needed. Because it just, for me, it comes down to the math of durability. What can it take before it's removed from the field? And it was just such a laughably easy piece to take down that it just felt like you were basically handicapping yourself taking it. By buffing that unit, you've now created a much more viable prospect for the Rebel core line. I do think that Imperials are still going to be the gold standard of diversity, in the sense that there's very little in their faction that's bad. With the exception of their characters. I mean, that's kind of the Imperial flag faction, is that everything they have has been pretty okay or good, with the exception of their characters tend to be a little bit overpriced. But it still allows the Imperial player to have the most diverse roster out of every faction.
All right, so most of the RRG was your favorite part of the RRG.
I like them design flaw.
Yeah. Ben, your favorite part of the RRG.
I'm going to be a jerk and say two things, but they're going to be fast. One, being able to compulsory move at the end of my turn with my repulsors. Two, the really, really great balance that's been achieved with the Imperial Core Troopers.
Mine's very simple. I like shooting a lot of laser bolts. Being able to put a heavy machine gun in the back of a tank makes me very, very, very happy. And I can't wait to put that on the table.
You like the guy with the big red sword.
I do, but I like putting a giant heavy machine gun in the back of a tank a little bit more.
Are we high-fiving?
I'm adjusting my lighting. But we can high five. Yeah.
All right.
There we go.
Super corny in a bit, but thank you all for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this 2.5 hour long review of the RRG. I think we covered basically everything. If we got something wrong, please let us know. Social media links are on the channel. They're not in the video here, but I believe they are on the channel. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You can find us on the Discord, and occasionally we even post to Reddit. So we are
And Twitter.
And Twitter. I forgot Twitter, which is probably where we post the most. So you take a look, find us on there. Ben's got some exciting stuff coming up. I'm going to try to be streaming a little more often now that I've got things set up for us. And otherwise, you all have a great rest of your night. Peace.